of the Administrator of NASA, Director Bolden. But before we do, I want to say that this is the last public hearing of Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson. This is not her last appearance before the committee, but it's our last public hearing on the CJS appropriations. And as her good friend and colleague, I have a present for you.
Nope.
This is not a goodbye gift. This is a commemorative gift, but we couldn't let this gathering of people, particularly from America's space program, its leadership, those who are interested in the space community, without taking this opportunity to just thank you for being a really great senator from Texas, to really a great senator for America and America's future, science, technology, a real advocate for the space program, keeping an eye on the bottom line. And we just wanted to let you know this subcommittee, its members and all, think just the world of you. So let me present that to you. Take a peek.
Okay, thank you very much.
No, it didn't come from him.
No, I never give gifts from him.
He's going to give you one in a minute.
Oh, gosh, this is great. Oh,
wait till you see this. This is
I'd rather have one from him.
This is so cool.
This is cool. That is really cool.
It is a crystal rocket.
It is. That is.
It's the space shuttle, made here in the United States of America, on time.
That, yeah. And the time is
it's
right.
on time. It's on time.
I love it. Isn't that neat? Yeah, love it. Thank you.
Put it up there, it might launch.
Well, I love it, and thank you for the commemoration. I did not realize this would be our last official hearing, but we do have a lot of work to do, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate the relationship and the support that we have from our chairman and the members of this committee. I think we've done great things for NASA, and we've been creative, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate the ability for us to be on the same wavelength and really accomplish something for our preeminence in space. So thank you very much.
Well, Senator Hutchinson, it is our last, excuse me, it is our last scheduled hearing on the fiscal year 13 CJS appropriations. The chair reserves the right to conduct other hearings as might deem necessary as our process continues onward, or if there is a special event that would require special attention. So that's our last scheduled hearing, but we know you're going to be in the thick of it on this bill all the way up to the president signing it.
That's for sure.
We're going to get underway pretty quickly, and we want to thank Administrator Bolden for being so flexible. This hearing was originally scheduled for Thursday, and because of other hearings at this quick step time, we asked to rearrange this. So we thank you for your courtesy. What we're going to do today is have opening statements from Senator Hutchinson and myself, then go to questions. We'll follow the 5-minute rule, and look forward to hearing from the administrator. So today we want to welcome Administrator Bolden, testifying in behalf of the 2013 NASA appropriations. As chairwoman, I have 3 priorities for NASA. Make sure we have a balanced space program that will make NASA move forward with the programs that that Congress has authorized and funded. We want NASA to be an economic engine, out innovating, out educating, and out building what we need to do to keep America preeminent in space. Also, as a duty to the taxpayer, we continue our rigorous oversight and accountability to make sure taxpayers' dollars are spent wisely, and to acknowledge the fact that we need to focus on a more frugal government. I want to make sure that NASA has what it takes to carry out its mission, explore the universe, understand and protect our planet, create new knowledge and new technologies that lead to breakthroughs. The President's budget for NASA is $17.7 billion. I want the committee to note this is $89 million below 2012, and in the last 3 years, NASA has already been cut by $1 billion. Within the request out, NASA outlines 3 top priorities: the Space Launch System rocket and the Orion capsule. I know of great interest to the members. Supporting the International Space Station with commercial flights for cargo and hopefully one day astronauts. Building the James Webb Telescope, but also continuing our focus on science. NASA will be asked to accomplish these priorities with far less than in the last NASA Authorization Act. In supporting these 3 priorities, NASA has made some tough choices. Science is cut by $179 million below 2012. The funding for the Space Launch System and Orion is $291 million below 2012. And NASA education funding, something I know is very important to the administrator, is cut $38 million or $28 million. Additionally, if we don't avoid a sequester, NASA will be cut by another 8% across the board. We'd want to hear from Administrator Bolden on how a cut like that will impact the NASA ability to carry out its mission. Oh, man, and that pollen is, I hope the space capsules are cleaner than the Dirksen building here. The subcommittee has always worked to make sure we have a balanced space program in science, aeronautics, a reliable transportation system, and human space flight. For science, this budget will keep NASA's near-term launches on track. This is good news and important sign missions to look at our solar system, understand the sun, and protect our planet. I'm troubled that the budget does not invest adequately in future missions, the highest science priorities that are identified by the national academies in their decadal surveys. We're concerned about the cuts in planetary science, mission to planet Earth, dark energy, and heliophysics. We'll explore that more in the questions. We know that NASA is an economic engine, and we hope to hear more about what SpaceX and Orbital are doing and whether we are going to be on time and online. I just want to close by commenting on accountability and oversight. First of all, we need to compliment NASA that it achieved for the first time since 2002 a clean financial audit. And I know that was due to your stewardship and insistence, Mr. Administrator. And we're counting on you and your team to continue vigilant oversight and accountability. I appreciate NASA's effort to also reevaluate the James Webb Telescope. We've got to make sure we stay online and to keep the project underway. GAO's most recent assessment of NASA's large projects found that NASA's large programs are often over budget and behind schedule. They can do better, and we'll be able to talk about it. I ask unanimous consent that my full statement be in the record. We have many members here, and I know we will want to proceed. Senator Hutchinson, do you have a statement?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I am concerned about the budget that the Administrator is putting forward today. And I want to go over just some of the agreements that we have made in the past and what the result of those agreements is in your budget, Mr. Administrator. Your testimony for the committee lays out what NASA claims are its priorities, but what is said and what is being proposed don't really match. NASA's priorities, as we all agreed to in a meeting in my office just a few months ago, were number one, the James Webb Telescope, and it has been thoroughly reviewed and appropriately funded. It is a priority which is funded as anticipated. The second priority is the Space Launch System and the Orion capsule, which were studied inside and outside of NASA, and again independently before finally being allowed to move forward. The resulting independent analysis said the budget assumed in that analysis for the first 3 to 5 years, which was what we had agreed would be the amount, was accurate and provided what was needed to maintain schedule. So, of course, I was surprised when I got the call that NASA was going to cut this part of the budget by $170 million. This is a case where NASA has chosen to say it's a priority, but has deliberately cut the funding that was assumed to assure that it could maintain its schedule. So, this is, of course, a great concern to me and to the members of Congress who agreed with these priorities and thought we had the agreement from NASA. Number three, the final priority is commercial crew, which receives a proposed increase of 104% over last year. This is being asked for without any type of independent cost verification for the program, and at $830 million exceeds the authorized amount for commercial crew by $330 million. Now, many in the space community say that a lot is riding on the upcoming cargo demonstration flight next month, and the fate of commercial crew is tied to its success. I think they're wrong. I think they should be saying it's about time, that we have been waiting for years longer than we have been promised by NASA and its commercial partners for this launch, and we hope the delay will produce success. But even though commercial cargo continues to struggle to attain its goals, I recognize its importance. I do support commercial crew. However, I think NASA is continuing to throw money at too many companies with a hope of flying astronauts and not doing what it has done with the SLS and the launch vehicle, which is to undertake a study for the commercial crew similar to what you have done in Orion and SLS, including an independent analysis of options, and then funding the programs that NASA believes have the most hope of gaining what we all want, which is the quickest American-provided commercial crew vehicle to the space station as possible. Members of Congress are already coalescing around NASA choosing no more than 2 companies, providing competition as well as funding realities that we see in our budget and not stealing from the long-term future, which is Orion and the launch vehicle. If we provided the authorized level for this year for commercial crew and add the funds from last year that have yet to be spent, NASA would have over $900 million available for commercial crew selections. That amount of funding fits within NASA's stated estimated cost of $300 to $500 million per commercial crew entrant, if 2 are selected. If you adhere to the 3 or 4, you're going to go over the budget. You're going to continue to cut back on Orion and the launch vehicle, and it's going to mean that our long-term future is jeopardized. So I hope, Mr. Administrator, that you and the NASA personnel who have done such a great job for our country through all these years of space exploration will go back to the drawing board and support commercial crew in a fiscally responsible way so that we can all once again be on the same page for our goals, which is a commercial crew vehicle that will go to the space station within a couple of years. At the same time that we are using the expertise from that and moving forward expeditiously for the longer-term lower Earth orbit ventures that will spell the real long-term future for the science and technology that we hope to gain. Thank you, Madam President. Or Chairman.
I liked it.
You'll take it?
We're going to turn to Administrator Bolden for his testimony, and then after the conclusion of his testimony, Senator Cochran, noting the ranking member and appropriations and many demands on your time, we'll turn to you for the first set of questions. Would that help you out?
Madam Chair, Senator Hutchinson, and members of the subcommittee, today it's my pleasure and my privilege to discuss the President's Fiscal Year 2013 budget request for NASA. All of us at NASA are very grateful to the Congress and to this subcommittee for the strong level of support we continue to receive. And before I press on anymore, I have to join the chair in recognizing Senator Hutchinson for your long-term commitment to NASA, as well as to this Congress. I am certain, although this may be the last official meeting of this public meeting of this committee, I'm certain that this will not be the last time that you and I spend time together. I really look forward to it. But we have benefited from your guidance and your commitment since your election in 1993. And you have always been a strong advocate for human space flight and for the Johnson Space Center, a place that I call home at one time. You have been one of Congress's strongest proponents for the space station. And you have insisted that we enhance its utilization, and you were the one that forced us or supported us in making it a national laboratory. You were a key champion for AMS and for SLS and MPCV and for full utilization of the station. And I really want to thank you personally for, although your leadership in the appropriations action that brought all of us together in your office, as you said, on a bipartisan basis with then Director of the Office of Management and Budget, Jack Lew, to get the 3 priorities for NASA that we have. Your insistence that we prioritize. Otherwise, we were going nowhere. So I sincerely thank you on behalf of all of the NASA family, and I look forward to continuing to work with you until the last day you're in office, and then even after that, because I know you will continue to make your mark on the space program. But thank you very much personally. Our requested budget, as has already been mentioned, was $17.7 billion, and this will enable NASA to continue to execute bipartisan space exploration as planned and agreed to by the President and the Congress in 2010. Despite the constrained fiscal environment facing the nation, this request supports an ambitious civil space program that puts us on a path to achieving a truly exciting set of goals, to send humans to an asteroid and ultimately to Mars, and to broaden human activity in low Earth orbit. In Fiscal 13, the Fiscal 13 request supports all of the key priorities agreed upon by the President and congressional leadership. First, American astronauts continue to live and work in space on board the now completed International Space Station, conducting research to benefit life here on Earth and prepare us for deep space human exploration. NASA is committed to making this national resource available to broader research communities. We are also committed to ensuring that American companies launching from U.S. soil transport our astronauts and their cargo to the space station. This year, we will see the first commercial cargo flights to ISS, and with the approval of the funding requests, we're on track to have an American company or companies transporting our astronauts to the station by 2017. Second, NASA is on track to develop a flexible deep space launch system that will be the most capable in history. We're making remarkable progress on contracts and design for the Space Launch System heavy lift rocket and the multi-purpose crew vehicle Orion, which will carry American astronauts beyond low Earth orbit and into deep space within the next decade. Our Fiscal Year 2013 budget request supports our plans for an uncrewed test flight in 2017 and a crewed test mission by 2021. Third, we continue progress toward a launch of the world's most advanced telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, in 2018. NASA's budget request supports a portfolio of innovative science missions resulting in a stream of data from orbits around the Sun, Mercury, the Moon, the asteroid Vesta, Mars, and Saturn. We now have missions on the way to Jupiter, Pluto, and Mars. 16 Earth science missions currently study the Earth. As this committee knows, tough choices had to be made, so we will not be moving forward with the 2016 and 2018 ExoMars missions we had been planning with the European Space Agency. Instead, NASA is developing a new integrated strategy for a sequence of strategically selected missions that increase scientific knowledge, advance key technologies, and inform and enable human exploration goals. Our plan, including the framework for a mission to take advantage of the 2018 to 2020 launch opportunity, is targeted for completion, hopefully in time to support the FY13 appropriations process. As we finalize it, we will coordinate extensively with the science community, our international partners, and of course, the Congress. The FY13 budget request continues to support ambitious Mars exploration, including 2 spacecraft currently orbiting Mars, the Opportunity rover on the surface, the Mars Science Laboratory Curiosity, and the planned 2013 MAVEN mission to explore the Mars upper atmosphere. The FY13 budget request also supports continued advances in new aviation, science, and space technologies, absolutely essential to enable NASA to achieve its ambitious goals. With the 2013 request, NASA will conduct aeronautics research to enable the realization of NASA's next generation air transportation system, or NextGen, and use NASA's education programs to inspire the next generation of scientists and explorers. NASA is grateful to the American people and to you on this subcommittee for your continued support in these challenging times. I thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Senator Cochran.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Mr. Administrator, welcome to our committee. We congratulate you on your continued leadership for NASA. And we're really proud that Mississippi has had a very conspicuous role to play in our space flight efforts, specifically being the home of the Space Launch System and the testing that has been consistent with the mission of NASA up to this point. We hope that NASA is considering what it's going to do and how it's going to proceed with testing and what funds will be needed so that we can respond in the Congress with support from those of us who support NASA, and we would like to see the programs that we think are in the national interest continued, and the Stennis Space Center would play a big role in that, in my view. Is that something that you could agree with, or if there are other plans that NASA has that we're not aware of, could you let us know what they are?
Senator, as you and I have discussed before, Stennis plays a key role in the future of NASA, whether it's with NASA engine testing and development or whether it's commercial engine testing and development. And the other thing that you know very well, I refer to Stennis as the federal city. We host a number of other federal agencies at Stennis, and we're very proud to do that. Everything from the Coast Guard, Special Operations Forces, the Navy, all the buoys are redone on board the Stennis facility. So we're very proud of that, and we see Stennis continuing its role as a federal city.
Well, I'm hopeful that we will have enough advance notice and advice so that we can be supportive and helpful if that's the will of this committee and of the Senate. I wonder if you could say at this point what the cost would be if we reactivated the testing for a space flight or for launches that would occur under NASA's jurisdiction. What specific plans do you anticipate having to implement?
Senator, I think what you're addressing is a total test of the main propulsion test center the way that we used to do, which is all the cluster of all 5 engines for the SLS. We're evaluating right now, whether we really need to do that. We think we will, and we will come back to this committee and to the Congress to say what we think we need to do in terms of shifting funds from something else that we were going to do to be able to conduct that test. But I'm not prepared to give you an estimate right now, but I will take it for the record and get back to the committee on that.
That would be helpful for us to know, just for our information, and also planning to be sure we have room within our budget resolutions to provide the funding that would be needed. I understand that rocket test facilities would get the same kind of systems level testing of a space launch system, and that an evaluation could be done by NASA at this time of the potential commercial uses of such facilities and the resources that may be needed in the next fiscal year. Do you have any specific request in this budget year that's coming up of the specific amounts that would be needed for any of those activities?
Senator, as was requested by the Congress, we are just about finished with a report on the utilization and rehabilitation of the rocket test facilities, and that will give us definitive answers to the question you just posed. So we're pretty close. I have a draft of that report. It should be ready soon, and if we need additional funds, we will be coming to the Congress for that.
Well, we thank you for that, and Madam Chair, I'll yield the floor after making an observation that we continue to be complimented that the Stennis Space Center is known as the Federal City, and we are hopeful that we'll continue to be good hosts and supportive of the efforts that are made there to help make sure that we carry out the programs that were designed there at Stennis and continue to be cherished in the memory of those of us who lived in Mississippi.
Yes, sir.
Administrator Bolden, we'll probably go to a second round, but my first round, I want to focus on the James Webb Telescope. I think, as you've heard from members here, we're each interested where NASA, and through our appropriations process and authorizing, is making a significant investment in some really big projects with really big bucks behind it, for which there is no margin for error or cost overruns and so on. Last year, this subcommittee took a major step with a bipartisan concurrence of everyone to make sure we put James Webb on track. This is after we had asked for a significant management review, because we were concerned 2 years ago that James Webb was off track, off budget, and we were concerned that it was going to be canceled because of, not because of technology dysfunction, but because of management dysfunction. So last year, we put in a significant amount of money, and this year the budget request is for $628 million to keep it on track for a launch by 2018. My question to you is the James Webb Telescope on track, and how do we know it to be so?
Senator, no one was as concerned as I was when I found out the condition of JWST, and I can tell you now that after the management changes we made at the Goddard Space Flight Center, at headquarters, and also in the prime contractor, Northrop Grumman, I'm very confident that James Webb is on track. I get a status report on milestones and cost every month, and for almost a year and a half now, we have met or exceeded the time on every. When I say exceeded, it has been quicker than forecast. So we have met or bettered every milestone, and we are on cost. There were 26 milestones that we laid out to this date 27 of them have been met. The only one we delayed because of the results that we wanted to get from one of the other milestones there. So two things: management in place, the diligence and discipline with which we're approaching the project, the constant oversight that's given from my office by me and my associate administrator makes me confident that James Webb is going to make a 2018 launch with the funding that we have requested in this budget.
Do you believe that it will make 2018?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Well, what will happen? What will happen if there's a sequester?
Senator, I think I've talked to everybody about this, and I am, while I am a realist, I'm probably the world's greatest optimist, and I am confident that this Congress will avoid that, and that we will have a budget, and that we will be able to meet our 2018 deadline.
Well, you couldn't be an astronaut without being an optimist.
Yes, ma'am. I heard that this morning, as a matter of fact, that you don't want people who fly things making budget estimates.
You have to have one of the most optimistic views. But I am asking you, what would be the consequences of a sequester, and have you looked at it, both James Webb and also the consequences of a sequester on the NASA budget?
Senator, I think anyone would say, and we have not taken a hard look at the results, what would be the result of a sequester, but we all know that it would be a significant cut to the NASA budget, which is already strained. And, we would have to come back to the Congress and talk about how we met our priorities and whether we decided that we were going to put all of our funds on the priorities and forsake everything else. That would be the only way that we would be able to see those three priorities stick to the dates that we have right now.
So here is then, has the administration directed you as the NASA administrator to have contingency plans in the event of it?
No, ma'am, we have not. The administration's position is, while they're not as optimistic as I am all the time, I think we all are optimistic that between the administration and the Congress, we'll find a way to work this out, and we won't get to sequester that. So we are not making contingency plans or anything.
Well, I think I'm optimistic too. I would have never done the things in my life if I wasn't optimistic. But I think I'm also the kind of person that I believe in a double cord if I needed a parachute. And I like having brakes on a car, and I like having airbags. So I really would recommend to both the administration and to you, again, complying with their directions to really be ready for some real challenges. We hope not.
Yes, ma'am.
But we hope not. But I think there is a big flashing yellow light on our screen. But having said that, I've got a flashing yellow light on my time. Let me turn to Senator Hutchinson.
I'm happy to let Senator Shelby and Senator Brown go next. Senator Shelby.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Hutchinson. Mr. Administrator, I believe that the core mission of NASA is to build cutting-edge systems that allow us to expand our knowledge of the universe. This administration, I believe, seems to think that NASA's job is to use taxpayer money as venture capital to support speculative commercial companies, the future Solandras of the space industry. Despite identifying SLS, Space Launch System, as a priority program, you requested $150 million less in 2013 budget year than the Congress provided in 2012 for the SLS vehicle development. At the same time, you doubled funding for commercial programs. When is this administration going to get the message that the Congress, I believe, is not willing to subsidize so-called commercial vendors at the expense of NASA's core mission of engineering and exploration?
Senator, I cannot agree more with your position that our job is technology development and exploration and cutting-edge science and technology, and that's what we asked for in the budget. We put forth a budget that requests $675 million for space technology, which covers the gamut of what we do. It contributes to the heavy lift launch vehicle. It contributes to a next generation multi-purpose crew vehicle. It contributes to our science program. It will enable us to better go to Mars, both robotically and in human space flight. So we did not have a space technology line until the FY12 budget. The President asked for $1.5 billion for space technology in the first budget that I brought to this Congress when my first year as the NASA Administrator. So we agree with you that we do need to be about cutting edge technology, and we're trying to do that.
In your statement, you said that you're pleased, and I'll quote you, pleased with the steady progress of U.S. commercial providers in developing domestic cargo and crew transportation services. I would note that one of your commercial cargo providers was originally scheduled to complete three demonstration flights by September of 2009. They have only completed one, and many expect the date of that second launch to slip again soon, as it just did in February. Your other cargo vendor was expected to complete a single demonstration flight by December of 2010. That flight has not even been scheduled yet. I guess the question posed here is, how much longer will their flights have to be delayed before you, as the administrator, are no longer, quote, pleased with these providers?
Senator, I'm confident that one of the...
Are you still pleased with them?
Senator, I'm pleased with their progress. One of our providers, SpaceX, is scheduled to launch on the 30th of April. And I think
they'll keep that
I
date?
think they will make that. The other one, Orbital Sciences, has a lot of things on there that are out of their personal control in terms of a launch facility, but I think they will be ready to launch sometime this summer. The big thing for us and them is to get the launch pad ready at Wallops so that they can run a main propulsion test, and then they'll be ready to fly their first demonstration. I would caution everyone to be somewhat resistant to talk about delays. I came to NASA in 1980 to join the astronaut program, and that was 2 years after the shuttle was supposed to have flown. I am personally thankful that we did not fly in 1978 because we weren't ready. I worked as a member of the tile repair Tiger team because when we flew Columbia from its manufacturing facility in Palmdale, California to the Kennedy Space Center, it got there and a large majority of the tiles were missing. We weren't ready, and we learned a lot of things that caused us to delay. But when we flew STS-1, it was an incredible achievement. So I think the commercial providers are doing very well. They're meeting challenges that have come their way. We advise. We can't tell them what to do, but we have relatively good insight into what they're doing, and we're confident that the decisions they're making are prudent. We would much rather see them delay than to fly and fail, because we cannot use a failed system.
I'm very concerned that NASA's abandoned, or seems to be abandoning, its plan to abide by the federal acquisition regulations in the commercial crew program, and instead continue to use Space Act agreements. Space Act agreements will provide you more flexibility, but they do so at the expense, some of us believe, of transparency and accountability on the part of the contractor. I think such agreements in this case are dangerous to both the astronauts who might fly in commercial rockets and the American taxpayers who to date have had to fund them. You claim, Mr. Administrator, that the budget cuts made by this committee have, quote, necessitated, is your word, you to abandon traditional government buying practice. I would note that you are currently funding 4 separate vendors in the commercial crew program, some of whom have never built a single piece of space hardware, and only one of whom has ever built hardware that carried humans. My question is this: is it not possible that the answer to your budget issues is to fund fewer vendors? Wouldn't you rather have more effective government oversight over 1 or 2 providers rather than less oversight over 4 or more?
Senator, there's a couple of answers to your question. One is when we purchase services from the private companies, they will be operating under contracts that comply with federal acquisition regulations. So we won't purchase services under a Space Act agreement. We'll purchase services under FAR. We have chosen to extend our utilization of Space Act agreements because it does allow us to carry hopefully more than one potential provider for as long as we can, so that we get competition and we get the best product. In the Commercial Crew Development Program, we funded as many providers as we could, and it's important to understand the difference between CCDEV, Commercial Crew Development Program, which is what we are about to end, and the acquisition program that we're about to enter, where we buy a launch provider for commercial crew. CCDEV, some were looking at capsules, some were looking at launch vehicles. ULA was not looking at either. They were looking at a self-monitoring maintenance system on a vehicle. So we had different providers. We utilized their expertise to give us information and technology that we needed to put into the ultimate system. So hopefully the result from the effort and the money that we put into CCDEV will be, as all of you say, a final product from a or two providers that takes advantage of all of the benefits that we got from the individual providers with individual components of the total system.
But isn't some of the program, it seems to a lot of people, to be a march away from NASA, in other words, into the private sector, vendors, rather than what NASA has proven over many years to have?
Senator, quite the contrary. It is a march toward what it is a contrary. It is a march toward the exact way that we did Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, the shuttle, except the acquisition method. With those, we bought a vehicle and then we owned it and we managed it, and that's what cost us money. The infrastructure, the underlying cost for Space Shuttle was $2 billion a year, whether I used it or not. Mm-hmm. That's because I had to maintain the facilities, I had to keep the people to run it, I had to do everything. Under the commercial program, we will purchase a service, and I will remind everyone. You know, Senator Hutchinson mentioned why couldn't we do like we did with SLS and MPCV? Because we had previously had a robust competition in the old Constellation program. We got a product like Orion, and when we started looking at what we wanted to use for a multi-purpose crew vehicle, it made it not easy, because we still had to go through a process of evaluation, independent assessment, but we were able to accept the Orion vehicle lock, stock, and barrel from what was in the Constellation program. We didn't that, but that does not say it was not chosen under competition. It had rigorous competition. Same thing for the SLS. It underwent rigorous competition, and we used that, and we were able to go back to the procurement people and say, look, we're not trying to just take something unproven. This is the result of rigorous competition. The way I described it, we tried to take the nuggets from Constellation and transition them into SLS MPCV, and I think that's what we got. I think we won't know until we fly, but I think we are well on our way to demonstrating that the process we used there, which I will remind everybody was severely questioned by many. Why are you doing it this way? Why don't you just go get another vehicle? We didn't think that would be prudent, because we wanted to take advantage of the competition that had brought us those vehicles.
Senator Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. General, the previous administration declared 10 healthy centers and laid out responsibilities for each. When we sat down before your confirmation over a year ago, you assured me this policy was no longer needed because NASA had 10 healthy centers. But without a 10 healthy centers policy, you're asking us now to give you ability to shift funds around with no guarantee that the research centers or flight centers or specific programs will be funded at adequate levels. How do all of us know you have a serious commitment to making sure there are 10 healthy centers? Are you laying out a detailed plan for us so that we know that?
Sir, I think when you and I talked numerous times, I said I don't like the term 10 healthy centers because that term implies that, that you've got to force workplaces where it may not belong. What I like is a very healthy NASA that relies on 10 centers with diverse skills and capabilities that support that healthy agency and not individual centers. And I think what hopefully all of you are seeing is that we are trying our best to make sure that every center that is presently a member of the NASA family gets an adequate share of the work that we are doing in the 3 principal mission areas of aeronautics, human space flight, and science. If you look at Glenn, for example, it has the lion's, well, probably Ray Lugo would admit he has a significant share, if not the lion's share, of the technology development funds. Even though the program may not be run out of Glenn, the money is being spent through Glenn, and there's a big difference between where a program is housed and where the money is being spent. Glenn is a vital center for us, not only for human space flight, but they are the heart and soul, along with Dryden and Langley, for aeronautics research. What we're doing right now to support DoD and even commercial aviation, a lot of that's being done out of Glenn, whether it's icing test or they're the major center for rotor wing research.
But
so
we're
they're
not
very helpful.
I don't think any of us think that the issue is forcing work at any one of these centers. I have a couple of comments about aeronautics. Aeronautics, you know, the first A in NASA is aeronautics before the S for space, and NASA's requesting $551 million for aeronautics, less than last year, half what's authorized. Put that aside for a minute, but sort of along the lines of Senator Cochran's comments about Stennis Center, I'm concerned that, from your comments, I'm concerned that NASA's outsourcing hundreds of millions of dollars for R&D at the Space Flight Center when the research centers can do this work. Why does this business model no longer seem so workable to do this at these centers, especially a research center like NASA Glenn?
Senator, I'm not sure that we're not following the model that utilizes the skills at the individual center. I may misunderstand your question. I think we are utilizing the skills at the centers, and we redistribute work such that it goes to the strongest center. We sometimes use people from one center to do work at another, and we either detail them there or we let them do the work that belongs to another center in their home center. So I probably misunderstand the question.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but let me shift to it because I just have a couple more minutes. About Plumbrook, I appreciate, first of all, you're correcting some of our House counterparts when they referred to Plumbrook as a test stand. As you know, it's not a test stand. It's one-of-a-kind test center. I'm looking for what you can tell us NASA can do to better utilize those facilities. For instance, one example, the Europeans want to use Plumbrook. I understand NASA headquarters seems to be holding this up. Why wouldn't we jump at this opportunity for the European Space Agency to want to use Plumbrook and its terrific facilities?
Senator Brown, I'll have to get back to you. I am not aware of us holding up any, if in fact ESA is asking to test a vehicle at Plumbrook, I'm not aware of what we're doing to disallow that. So I will take that question for the record and get back to you.
Okay, our understanding is there has been a delay. We don't know why. It's a significant proposal, and we will follow up with you then. Okay.
Senator, that would be in opposition to my stated direction to everybody that we should find people to put in our facilities.
Okay, good.
I don't care where they come from.
Good to hear. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Hutchinson.
Mr. Administrator, as I mentioned, I know, I'm just waiting for I'm going to ask you a question, you're not going to answer it, and we're going to be where we are, and we're going to settle this one-on-one. I know. But I'll just ask.
Senator.
I'll try my best. I talked about, and you acknowledged, that we set 3 priority goals, and you fully funded one. You have now gone 100% over on one and cut the third priority by virtually the same amount. that you went over on the second priority. So you can imagine why we would think that you are cutting the Orion and the SLS in favor of commercial crew. What I would hope is that we could come to the joint goals and all work together for commercial crew, but not at the expense of Orion and SLS. One thing that you mentioned, you're funding at a 21% increase this year is technology. Why is it that you feel so compelled to cut the future, which is SLS and Orion, in favor of the immediate, which is commercial crew, as we acknowledge? Why not keep the three priorities, keep the faith with Congress, and help us feel like we're all going in the same direction?
Senator, I do believe that we are doing our best to keep faith with Congress. When we agreed upon the three priorities, we said we were going to fund SLS and MPCV, and we were going to comply with a schedule that we had laid out for everyone. I provided a list to the committee of achievements with both SLS and MPCV to date. Some of them are well ahead of where we expected to be. So while I know you're talking about dollars, I'm actually talking about accomplishments, getting us to a 2014 launch date for Orion that Lockheed Martin wants to do an exploration test flight. They're going to make that. So 2 years from now, we're going to fly Orion. That was not even in our program before. 2017, I think, at the rate we're going right now and the funding profile that we have, while not optimal, will get us to a 2017 first uncrewed flight of SLS and MPCV combination. That will be a first-generation SLS MPCV. And then no later than 2021, we will see a crewed mission on SLS MPCV. Additional funds would help the 2021 date because we could pull some things forward, we could reduce some risk, but it won't affect the 2017 launch date, the first uncrewed mission. So I think we have put funds against SLS and MPCV to get to to meet the objectives that we agreed to with the Congress. While commercial crew and cargo is not a priority, so to speak, it is not one of the priorities agreed upon by the Congress and the administration because there are only three. But commercial crew and cargo are vital for me to be able to live up to my promise to you on the International Space Station. Without an American capability to supply both cargo and crew to the International Space Station, the gap is going to continue to increase. I am going to continue to rely on the Russians to provide transportation for both cargo and crew, and I'm not sure that I can adequately enhance the International Space Station the way I want to do it.
Mr. Bolden, when you thoroughly studied Orion and SLS, you studied it in NASA, and then you studied it outside of NASA, and you had an outside group that you were adamant had to make the final decision, and you paid a lot of money for that further independent study. And probably what I would consider to be a year late, you finally got the report back that said, if the assumptions are correct for the next 3 to 5 years, the budget will be sufficient to make the goals for Orion and SLS a reality. And yet, the very next year, we have you coming forward cutting that budget that was the basis of your very sought after and required outside audit study before you would move forward. So here we are in what looks like the stepping back from what your outside study showed was necessary, so that you're going to be able to come in next year and say, gee, you know, we didn't get that funding that was the basis of that study, and so we probably can't do Orion and SLS, which is what the kind of rhetoric we have heard in the past. So I just wonder why you would be so obvious in cutting the Orion and SLS budget when you staked the whole credibility of going forward on the study that said we had to keep these assumed levels of spending.
Senator, it is my hope that before you leave the Congress, I will be able, NASA, will be able to show you where it's not going to cost us as much as is presently budgeted right now to complete SLS and MPCV, because the technologies that we're developing will reduce the costs, that we will move to lighter weight tanks. We will move to composite tanks. The original estimates we gave everybody were based on current state-of-the-art technology of the day. If we stay with that, then I'm not being responsible. So my hope is, and we have to live within the budget that you gave us, and that budget also has to provide funds for a wedge for additional things that will go with SLS and MPCV to make it a true exploration system. So, you know, that money has to come from within. So we are trying our best, as Senator Shelby mentioned, as Senator Cochran has mentioned, and as all of you have, we're trying to call upon our best technologists, both in the agency and academia and in industry, to help us get to the point where we are much more efficient in the development of our vehicles, that they are much better than the currently envisioned, and that we can get the job done that you said. We will not change the date.
You are so insistent that you're living within the budget that we gave you for Orion and SLS. But oddly, you're going $300 million over the authorized level for commercial. And you're saying on Orion and the SLS, you're going to have new technology that's going to bring the cost down, so everything's going to be fine. But on the other hand, you now are looking at 3 or 4 companies that you're subsidizing on the commercial crew side. So there doesn't appear to be any kind of future advantage for technology like you're proposing that you're going to have in the Orion and SLS. It doesn't seem to have any sense that there's a way forward that you can meet all of our goals with integrity by subsidizing competitive commercial crew enterprises, but maybe not 4. And
Senator, I have to reemphasize the fact that we are making progress, tangible progress on SLS and MPCV. We've completed, and I don't want to read through the list, but we've completed water drop tests on Orion. We have actually completed risk reduction. We've had an industry day on the SLS. We have taken steps that will reduce the risk on the vehicle itself as we do it. We have transferred main engines over to the Stennis Space Center for testing after modification. So we are doing everything that we can.
So is this going to be $170 million in savings? Is that what you're saying?
No, ma'am. But what I'm
well, that's what you're cutting out of this year's budget.
I will take one thing for the record. I think that you and I are disagreeing on what the FY12 appropriation amount really was. And I will take it for the record, but I think a check of the budget will show that the FY12 appropriation is actually in excess of what we submitted as needed based on the independent cost assessment. But I will take that for the record. I think the FY12 funding for SLS MPCV exceeded what we said we would need in the independent, substantiated by the independent cost assessment. I know that the FY12 budget was greatly reduced from what we said we would need in order to be able to close the gap with commercial crew. And so we're trying to get to the balance that you insist upon so that we have a commercial capability to supply the International Space Station and keep the gap from growing there.
Thank you.
We have not changed the delivery dates on SLS and MPCV. In fact, we have improved them somewhat by buying down risk with the tests that the demonstrated activities that we've done today.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Administrator, as you can see, there's a lot of yellow flashing lights and even skepticism about the amounts that are in the priorities. I'm going to go to another round just very quickly, but let me say this. First of all, this $17 billion plus budget request is pretty much the same as what it was when President Clinton and Vice President Gore were in the White House. So though we ask for greater responsibility, though we've had some severe challenges even in accident, we are still pretty much in the same money that we were 15 years ago. I know of no other federal agency that has a major international presence that has been kept at that level. So I think we all have to be realistic here about expectations of what we want NASA to do. If we had followed the Norm Augustine recommendations for as a balanced space program and a steady percentage of increase, that Mr. Augustine did that during the administration of President Bush the Elder, who we worked with very closely on many of these matters, you would be somewhere between $22 and $24 billion. So, but we're doing things in a different way and lessons learned. So let me just say, a concluding remark about Webb. I appreciate the fact that the NASA administration and also Northrop Grumman is taking very seriously our insistence on keeping the project on time, online, and meeting its objectives. And we're going to count on you to continue to do that. I know you've dispatched some of your most trusted NASA leaders to be able to oversee it from the NASA area. I just want to say this, and I've said this to the others involved in Webb, that don't think this is like the Hubble. I can't, if anything gets screwed up, I can't pull a rabbit out of the hat. I don't have a rabbit, and I don't have a hat. So we need to do that. Now let's go to commercial crew. The questions have been extensively asked, but here is my question. I happen to support the commercial endeavor for both cargo and crew. I think it's bold. I think it's promising, but I'm concerned that it's behind schedule. My concern is that now the best case scenarios about the launch for these is 2017. We've extended the life of the space station to 2020. Isn't this a hell of a lot of money for a 3-year effort? Could you comment on that?
Senator, I will comment, and I am not making a promise to anyone because I'm not in a position to make this commitment. But in anticipating what we can do with the International Space Station, the international partners, and that's the 19 member nations of the European Space Agency, Japan, Canada, the U.S., and Roscosmos and Russia, have all been engaged in engineering estimates of what the lifetime, how long can we fly the International Space Station. And we have all agreed that the International Space Station can be flown to at least 2028. So when I talk about the life of the International Space Station, I don't limit it to 2020. That to fly it beyond that, as we all learned after President Obama said he wanted to fly it to at least 2020, beyond the 2016 original date for termination, requires approval of all the international partners. But all of them are on the record saying that we know we can fly station until 2028, and most of them are on the record saying they would like to utilize it beyond that. So what NASA wants to do is get a commercial capability, get a U.S. capability in place as soon as possible so that we can enhance its utilization, can make it a true national laboratory, as Senator Hutchinson has insisted, and fly it as long as we can, support it as long as we can. I don't foresee us just because 2020 arrives saying that's the end of the International Space Station. That to me, that would make no sense. We should fly it as long as the nations feel there's a need. I think all of us believe that if we're really going to do a robust exploration program, there will be a long-term need for a microgravity.
But you can understand. First of all, it cost us $50 billion.
So beyond 3 years.
It cost us $50 billion to build the space station.
$100 billion.
And a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yes,
and as you know, we had some melancholy events along the way. And now we have the space station, and we have great international partners, and who signed up to go with the United States. They were kind of a coalition of the willing in space. We need to use that space station.
Yes, ma'am.
And we need to justify it to the taxpayer, and we need to show it in the scientific community. So we've got to get up there. So let's start with cargo. I understand that SpaceX expects to. We need rockets in the air.
Yes, ma'am.
Again, it's cargo. It's not people. When do you think SpaceX will launch?
I think they'll launch on the weather and everything else considered. I think they will be able to hold to their 30 April launch date.
So it will be April or the first week in May, depending on weather.
Yes, ma'am.
Then when is Orbital going to launch at Wallops?
Orbital's best estimate right now, and I promised you I need to give you concrete numbers. Orbital's best estimate right now is if we can finish, Mars can finish the launch pad.
Mars, for my colleagues in the record, is not
the
Mars.
Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport is the controlling entity. They own the launch pad at Wallops. They are building it for the state of Virginia. It's sort of like Space Florida in Florida. They contracted with a company to actually do the building. When you and I were out for the inauguration of the horizontal processing facility, we took a walk up on the launch pad, and we both felt good because the physical structure is.
But I want to feel good now.
Yes, ma'am.
So where are we?
It is not ready, but we have brought people up from the Kennedy Space Center, from Langley, from Marshall, from Stennis to help them with technical expertise to try to make sure that they can complete it on a date certain, and that date certain I have to provide to you, and I'll have to take for the record.
Well, I'm very frustrated by this.
As am I.
Because there was much promised, and the launch pad, it was going to be a new day at Wallops for Spaceport Wallops. This offers promise for not only a return to the space station, but other launch capability that would serve our national interest, which we don't have to elaborate on here. And I am puzzled and perplexed that for the last 8 weeks, I keep hearing that there's a problem with the launch pad, but I don't hear solutions. What I hear is that you've dispatched people, but I don't hear a solution. And we need to hear a solution.
Yes, ma'am, and I will bring that to you. I've had discussions with Mr. Bill Gerstenmaier, who heads our Human Exploration Operations Mission.
But I'm directing these comments also to Mars and to the people in charge of that they've got to get it going.
Yes, ma'am.
And because I think there is growing frustration and skepticism about this, and yet we hear that the rockets are ready, everything's ready, and so we've got to start saying, is this endeavor a go? The clock is ticking.
Yes, ma'am.
So now, this then goes to my last question with science. As we look, we feel that with the James Webb, we are continuing to secure America's preeminence in astronomy and astrophysics, that it is the next generation of Hubble. And we who have the Space Telescope Institute in Maryland are so proud of not only the Hubble, but the fact that Dr. Reese of the Space Telescope Institute and the Hopkins faculty has won a Nobel Prize. Much is being said about American exceptionalism, and we believe that it is in these endeavors that we have really demonstrated that. And so we need that, but we need to look ahead to also what is the science today and what is the science of the future and what can we afford. So the people have to make decisions. We make decisions about budgets, but people make decisions about careers. So right now the scientific community is concerned about where are we heading with small and medium-sized and large science missions in the future. Based on the National Academy of Sciences, not on what Senator Barb or Senator Kay Bailey or any of us say here, the National Academy, what is in this appropriations request that lays the groundwork for future recommendations in things like dark energy, astrophysics, heliophysics, earth science? Or are we in such an age of frugality that we aren't going to make those investments?
Senator, we are going to continue to make those investments. You know, people talk about flagship missions. Flagships are something that are of such importance to science. They answer the most challenging questions, and NASA has not given up on flagship missions. We don't have a new flagship in place, but I have to remind everyone that James Webb is a flagship mission that we are going to launch in 2018. The Mars Science Laboratory Curiosity, which is on its way to Mars right now, is a flagship mission which we launched in November and will land on Mars in August of this year. SLS MPCV in the area of human exploration is a flagship mission.
But see, that's my whole point. You know, there we are with flagship. We spend a lot of our time keeping it focused and online because it continually comes to us with underestimates. So then we have the flagship. So there we are, and I'm not minimizing their significance.
Yes, ma'am.
But they're the Santa Marias. But there's a whole group out there that wonders about the Ninas and the Pintas. And are we so busy bailing out the Santa Marias, we don't get to the Ninas and Pintas?
Senator, we have Ninas and Pintas on the way, as a matter of fact. And what we have been able to do with the Ninas and the Pintas, something like Juno, Grail, now Ebb and Flow, and some of the other medium class or small class science missions that are underway or in work, MAVEN, for example, going to Mars to measure its upper atmosphere. These missions, which have come about post-2009-ish or so, where we started utilizing a policy of joint confidence level assessments, where we looked at cost and schedule, and we are now holding programs to cost and schedule in a way that we were not able to do before. Juno is on its way to Jupiter, on cost, on schedule. Grail, Ebb and Flow are at the moon doing science, on cost, on schedule. NPP, which we produce.
So those are underway. So what? That's those.
MAVEN is in work. MAVEN is scheduled to launch in 2013. It is currently on cost, on schedule. I would even go so far as to say, while James Webb is a flagship and it started out in bad shape, I am very proud to say that since we restructured James Webb and replanned it, and we are now under new management, we hung a new shingle. James Webb is on cost and on schedule. Now that is absurd to say that for a mission that is billions of dollars over what the original assessment was. But since we worked with your staff and you, and we made a promise to you that we were going to deliver, we have done so. We are on cost and on schedule, or in some cases ahead of schedule with James Webb. We are doing things differently than the way we used to do it. We have to deliver. We know that. Or otherwise we perish.
Well, and so do the contractors.
Yes, ma'am. And they play. You know, this is anyone who thinks that NASA can make all this happen without our incredibly valuable contractors just doesn't know how we do business. We spend 85% of the taxpayers' money going out to the contractors, and so we have to hold their feet to the fire. And I can point to missions now where I think we are holding their feet to the fire. They understand because of people like you who have brought them in and said, okay, I don't have another hat and I don't have a rabbit. I think they understand what you've told them, and they are performing. We're on the way to launching a replacement for the Orbiting Carbon Observatory, OCO-2. Right now, that's on cost. And OSIRIS-REx.
I think we understand that.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you for that answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Hutchinson.
No further questions.
So, Mr. Administrator, we thank you for your testimony. I think Senator Hutchinson and I, in thanking you, we want to thank really all the men and women who work at the NASA centers, the contractors who support them, and also very important allies that participate with us in these very important projects. We view Canada, Japan, who itself is facing some challenges with their own budget because of the natural disaster. We treasure the relationship with Japan, both in space, science, and in national security. So we all need to work together and keep those Santa Marias afloat and make sure we have the Ninas and the Pintas, all of which we could afford, and we wouldn't mind the Navy's budget either. So having said that...
Senator, I appreciate that, and I do want to take an opportunity to congratulate you on the milestone that you yourself achieved this past weekend. That is something worthy of all of our applause for you. And Senator Hutchinson, I do want to thank you again.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, senators may submit additional questions for the official record. We'll request NASA's response within 30 days. This is the subcommittee's final regularly scheduled budget hearing. However, the committee reserves the right to hold others should the need arise, and the subcommittee stands in recess subject to the call of the chair with an anticipated markup of our bill sometime in mid to late April.